Ma'am, I'm telling you one last time, either you leave now or I'm placing you under arrest. That's what the officer said as he reached for his cuffs. I stood there barefoot on the porch of my late grandfather's old cabin, arms crossed, shaking, not out of fear but rage. Why? Because HOA Karen, wearing her usual oversized sunglasses and her tight little ponytail, had just screamed at the 911 dispatcher over the phone that I was a dangerous squatter, that she didn't feel safe, and that I refused to leave her neighborhood. But here's the twist she didn't know. I own the whole city. I bought it. Quietly. Through trusts. Through shell companies. Every piece of this town was under my umbrella now. Every store, every lot, every rental home. Even her house. And now here I was, standing in front of two cops who had no idea they were about to make the biggest mistake of their careers. I warned you, she screamed again. She won't leave. Arrest her. She said this junky cabin was her grandfather's, but it belongs to the association. The officer stepped forward. I held out my hand. Before you arrest me, I said calmly, I need you to check the deed on this property, and the name on the deed of the entire HOA. Because... I stopped. The officer's radio crackled. His partner stiffened. Karen's mouth hung open as she slowly looked at the badge clipped to the deed folder I pulled from the inside of my jacket. But just before I could finish that sentence, a loud crash echoed from behind the cabin. Boom. We all turned. What was that? One officer shouted, drawing his weapon. Karen shrieked and ducked behind a bush. I stepped off the porch barefoot, still calm, walking toward the sound. And that's when I saw it. The real shock. The moment that changed everything. We'll come back to what I saw in a moment. But first, let me take you to the beginning, before I became the silent owner of an entire city, before Karen ever met me, and before this cabin turned into ground zero. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, but I always spent summers with my grandfather, Jack, in a small Colorado town called Harmony Ridge. He was a carpenter, war veteran, and probably the kindest man to ever exist. The cabin he built by hand was tucked away in a forest clearing. No electricity, just gas lamps and a wood-burning stove. To him, it was paradise. To most people, it was a crumbling wooden box. But it was the only place I ever felt safe. My parents weren't the kindest people. My dad always called my dreams stupid, and my mom only cared about appearances. They didn't approve of Grandpa Jack. Said he was a loser playing survivalist in the woods. I didn't care. Every summer, as soon as school let out, I'd run straight to Jack's truck at the airport, toss my bags in the back, and disappear into the trees. That's where I learned about kindness. Jack would fix neighbors' roofs for free. He kept an extra generator in case someone's power went out. He taught me to chop wood, plant tomatoes, and how to read stars. Every story he told ended with a life lesson. You don't own land, he'd say. You care for it until it's someone else's turn. But you treat people like land too, with patience, respect, and responsibility. I never forgot that. The cabin wasn't just his home. It was a place where people found help, even if they didn't ask for it. After Jack passed away when I was 25, the HOA tried to say the cabin didn't belong to him. Said it was built illegally, that it had to be removed, that I had no right to live there. They even said I couldn't take any furniture from it unless I paid storage violation fees. I was heartbroken, angry, but I didn't fight them. Not then. I didn't have the money. Instead, I went back to LA, worked 3 jobs, slept in my car some nights, cried some nights. But I had a plan. And one day, that plan started to take shape. I met Thomas, an investor who believed in land repurposing. He gave me my first break, a contract to handle logistics on a real estate acquisition deal. Then another. Then another. I worked harder than anyone, and I didn't forget Harmony Ridge. In fact, it became my target. One by one, I started buying properties around it using LLCs. A bookstore here. A gas station there. I worked through a network of people, sometimes using different names, to keep things quiet. Before long, I controlled over 60% of the town's land. And I wasn't done. The HOA board, let's just say their houses were purchased through back channels, and their mortgages now sat with the company I controlled. They had no clue. They still sent me newsletters saying I owed fines. But I never said a word. I just waited, until the final piece of the puzzle came through, the deed to the old cabin, now fully restored in my name. That was the day I drove back up to Harmony Ridge, and parked in front of the same cabin where I'd learned to be human. The forest hadn't changed, but the people had. Karen, the HOA president, spotted me almost instantly. It started with a knock. "Excuse me," she said in that high-pitched, condescending tone. "This is private property. Tenants aren't allowed to rent cabins without HOA clearance. I'll have to call security if you don't leave." I smiled. "I'm not a tenant. You're not the owner either. I know everyone who lives here." "Then you should know me," I said, "because I'm your landlord." She blinked. "What? Never mind. Have a good day." I closed the door. She didn't like that. 10 minutes later, security showed up. They threatened to tow my truck. I let them. They called the police. I stayed seated on the porch, drinking tea from my grandpa's old mug. The officers arrived, confused but alert. Karen played her part well, trembling voice, false accusations, even crocodile tears. She told me she owns my home. Karen shouted. She's not well. That's when things escalated. The officer told me to stand. Told me I had one last chance. And that's where we came in. Me barefoot, holding a deed, cops pulling out cuffs, Karen screaming behind them. Then, boom. That loud crash behind the cabin. We all turned. I stepped toward it. And saw. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe. I saw a man was lying on the ground behind the cabin. Unconscious. Next to him, a shattered ladder, a knocked-over solar panel, and a bloodied hammer that had rolled toward a bush. The officer rushed ahead of me, his hand on his holster. The second officer called for backup. Karen screamed again and ducked, yelling something about violent squatters and booby traps. But I knew exactly who the man was. Earl. I gasped, hurrying over. It was Earl, Grandpa Jack's old friend. He used to help him fix the cabin during the summers. A wiry man with kind blue eyes and a white beard. I hadn't seen him in years. His breathing was shallow, but he was alive. Help him, I begged the officers. He's not a threat. He must have come to check on the place. He used to work here with my grandfather. He fell. One officer muttered, already radioing for EMTs. Karen didn't care. They're working together. I want both of them arrested. She's lying about everything. I'm the HOA president, and I have the right. I snapped. The right, I said, turning toward her. You mean the right to bully people? The right to call the police on innocent folks because you don't like how they look or where they sit. You're trespassing. I didn't speak. I just walked past her, back to the porch, grabbed the folder I had tucked into the wooden swing, and handed it to the officer. This is the deed, I said. Not just for the cabin, but for every property within a 6-mile radius. Including hers. The officer frowned. Ma'am. Call your precinct, I said. Ask for Deputy Coleman. He signed off on the title transfer last month. The officer hesitated, then stepped away to make the call. Karen was still shouting behind me, but her voice began to crack. Don't listen to her. She's scamming you. That's fake. I'll wait, I said calmly, kneeling beside Earl. I pulled off my cardigan and folded it under his head. His eyes fluttered open. Jack, he whispered. No, I said, holding back tears. It's me, Mia, Jack's granddaughter. He blinked twice, then smiled weakly. I knew you'd come back. 3 weeks earlier, I had received a strange letter. Handwritten, no return address, just 4 words. It's time. Come home. I hadn't been back to Harmony Ridge in nearly 10 years. After Grandpa Jack died and the HOA pushed me out, I had buried my memories. But that letter reopened everything. I didn't know who sent it, but I knew what it meant. I flew out the next day, stayed quietly in a hotel outside town, and drove a rented black pickup truck into the woods. I needed to see the cabin one more time before finalizing the land transfers. To my surprise, it was still there. Faded. Weathered. But standing. And that's when I saw Earl, sitting on the porch, carving a wooden rabbit. You came, he said without looking up. I got your letter. He smiled. Didn't sign it. Figured you'd know. I wasn't sure you were even alive. I ain't sure I am either most days, he chuckled, his voice still deep and raspy. But this cabin remembers you. We talked for hours that evening. About Jack. About the town. About how the HOA had grown into a monster, turning neighbors against each other, banning gardens, patrolling driveways, even finding people for wind chimes that were too loud. They made us feel small, Earl said. But I remember when this town was free. I'm going to buy it back, I whispered. Piece by piece. Quietly. I know, he said, grinning. That's why I sent the letter. He agreed to help me fix up the place for my return. Off the books, no HOA permits. He even rigged up some solar power to get running water going. But the day before I moved in, he called me. They know, he said. Karen's been sniffing around. Said someone spotted a black woman walking the trail to Jack's cabin. She's calling the cops. I'll handle it, I replied. He never got the chance to leave. Now here we were, back to the present. EMTs loading Earl into an ambulance, the officers talking quietly on the radio, and Karen pacing like a madwoman. Then the officer returned. Ma'am, he said to me. Deputy Coleman confirmed everything. The title checks out. You're the legal property owner. Karen froze. What? She whispered. The officer turned to her. I'm going to need you to calm down and step back. But no, she can't. This is my neighborhood. Not anymore, I said, stepping closer. Karen's face turned pale. Then you can't find me. You can't evict me. I could, I replied, but I won't yet. I believe in second chances. That was the truth. I didn't come back to punish people. I came back to restore what Jack built. I wanted peace. Harmony. Just like the town's name. But some people make peace impossible. That night, as the sun set over the trees, I sat back on the porch swing, watching as Karen got into her SUV, no longer yelling. Just staring. Plotting. I knew this wasn't over. And I was right. Because the next morning, I found a letter on my door. A court summons. Karen was suing me for fraudulent ownership of city property, harassment, and civil unrest. And guess what? She wasn't alone. The entire HOA board had signed it. This time, they were coming for blood. I stared at the envelope in my hand for a long time. It was thick, several pages tucked inside, neatly typed, legally formatted, stamped with red ink. The word summons to appear in court screamed from the front. Karen wasn't bluffing. She'd filed a lawsuit, and somehow dragged the entire HOA board with her. The charges? Ridiculous. Illegal occupation of residential land. Impersonation of a landowner. Intentional distress caused to the HOA board. Property manipulation through fraud. It would have been funny if it didn't come with an actual court date. 3 weeks from now. I sat down at the cabin table, poured a cup of cold coffee, and flipped through the paperwork. There were photos of me stepping out of the cabin. A screenshot of me standing barefoot on the porch when the cops arrived. They even included a printed copy of a Facebook post where Karen accused me of being a scammer squatter. They were serious. But so was I. What Karen didn't realize, and what she really didn't want to believe, was that my ownership wasn't some overnight stunt. I'd spent years building up to this. The cabin, the land, the utilities, even the HOA's own debt. She thought this was a game. It wasn't. But I wasn't going to fight her in the way she expected. Not with lawyers. Not yet. I had a different plan. 3 days later, I drove into town. Not to meet a lawyer, but to see people. Real people. The town baker, Mrs. Jensen, was sweeping her front porch when she saw me. "Mia," she blinked, adjusting her glasses. "Is that you? Jack's granddaughter?" I smiled. "It's me, ma'am." She dropped the broom and ran over, hugging me so tightly I nearly dropped the brown envelope in my hand. "Look at you," she beamed. "You disappeared after Jack passed. I thought they scared you off for good." "They tried," I admitted. "But I'm back now. And thank goodness. This town hasn't felt the same since Jack left. The HOA, they turned everything cold. Heartless. No one talks to each other anymore." "I'm trying to fix that," I said. Then I handed her the envelope. The same one I brought for every shop, every homeowner, every neighbor who remembered how the town used to be. Inside, a letter, written simply. "Dear neighbor, my name is Mia, Jack's granddaughter. You may remember me from summers past. I now own the property you live or operate on, not to control you, but to protect what my grandfather loved most, this community. You are safe. No fines. No threats. No spying. I want to rebuild Harmony Ridge, together. If you're willing to talk, I'll be on the porch of Jack's old cabin this Friday, at 5 p.m. No pressure. Just stories, food, and peace. Mia." I handed out 43 of those envelopes in 2 days. And waited. Friday came faster than I expected. I spent the day scrubbing the porch, dusting off chairs, brewing lemonade, and roasting sweet corn the way Grandpa Jack taught me. I set out tin cups, lanterns, and hung a wooden sign that read, "Welcome home, neighbor." At first, I thought no one would show up. 5:05 p.m., nothing. 5:12 p.m., still quiet. Then at 5:17 p.m., a single car rolled up. It was the gas station owner, Rick. He nodded shyly and handed me a peach cobbler. Then came Mrs. Jensen, followed by a young couple I didn't recognize. By 6 p.m., over 30 people were there. Some brought lawn chairs. Others stood and chatted. Kids ran around the clearing, laughing. For the first time in years, the cabin felt alive. People shared stories about Jack, how he fixed their fences, taught their kids how to fish, brought firewood during blizzards. I sat quietly, just listening, holding back tears. Then a man in a checkered shirt stepped forward. "Karen came by yesterday," he said. "Told us we'd be evicted if we attended this." Several others nodded. "She said you were lying," someone else added. "Said you forged everything." I stood. "I understand," I said softly. "I know what she's doing. But I'm not here to fight her with threats or fake rules. I'm here to restore something we all lost, community." I reached into my folder and pulled out the documents again. Not just deeds, but the HOA's foreclosure notice. You see, the HOA wasn't funded by magic. They borrowed money and defaulted. That debt, I'd purchased it last year. And just last month, when they failed to make the final interest payment, the HOA legally ceased to exist. They didn't know it yet, but they were already powerless. The next morning, Karen found out, and she lost her mind. I was watering the garden when I heard loud honking. Her white Range Rover pulled up, screeching to a halt. She marched out, holding the lawsuit papers in one hand and a phone in the other. "You think you can embarrass me?" she yelled. "You think you can steal this town and get away with it?" I stayed quiet. "You held a party in violation of HOA guidelines. You distributed unauthorized letters. And now you're claiming you're some savior? You're a fraud." I looked at her, then calmly said, "You should read the 3rd page of your lawsuit." She blinked. "What?" "Page 3. Paragraph 2. It confirms the HOA's registered debt holder." "That's me." "You're lying." "No," I replied. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away with your dignity. Disband the board. Apologize. Let the people live in peace." She stared at me, fists clenched. "I'll never apologize to a squatter. Then I'll see you in court." She stormed off. I thought that would be it for the day. But at 4 p.m., my phone rang. It was Sheriff Dalton. "Mia," he said, "I've got some bad news." "What happened?" "Karen's filed an emergency injunction. She's demanding a full city audit, claiming your deed ownership was forged. And she's hired a private investigator to dig into your past." My heart thudded. "She's also trying to get a restraining order. Says you're a threat to public order." I swallowed hard. "She wants a public hearing," he continued, "and it's scheduled next week at Town Hall." I sat on the porch swing, staring into the woods. Karen wasn't giving up. And now, the whole city would be watching. The hearing was set for Thursday. I had exactly 5 days to prepare. Karen had pulled out every weapon in her petty arsenal. Emergency injunctions, restraining orders, legal threats, HOA loyalist testimonies, and even a hired private investigator who had already left 3 voice messages on my phone demanding clarification on my acquisition trail. To be honest, I was shaken. Not afraid. Just exhausted. I had spent years working in silence, carefully acquiring each parcel, forming trusts, maneuvering through legal loopholes, and protecting my identity. But now that I'd stepped into the light, the snakes had slithered out too, and they were hissing loud. I knew the public hearing was going to be messy. Karen was a master manipulator. She'd twist narratives, dig into my past, and weaponize perception. This wasn't just about land anymore. It was about humiliation. But if she thought I was going to sit quietly and let her paint me as a squatter in my own city, she was wrong. The morning after the sheriff's call, I met with Deputy Coleman at the county clerk's office. He was one of the few officials who had helped verify my titles during the transfer process. "Karen's bluffing," he told me as he poured coffee into a chipped mug. "She doesn't have the legal standing. The HOA was dissolved when the board failed to meet debt servicing conditions. She's trying to use public noise to overturn what's already done." "Can she?" I asked. Coleman sighed. "Not likely. But if she gets the court of public opinion riled up enough, the city council might intervene. And if they do, she could drag you through months of litigation. It's not about winning. It's about wearing you down." I leaned back in my chair. "I'm not here to fight with her, Coleman. I just want to rebuild the community." "And you've done more in 3 weeks than they have in 3 years, he said. "But she doesn't care. To her, power is tradition. And she's terrified of change." I left the clerk's office with a USB drive of verified deeds, timestamps, email receipts, and certified proof that the HOA board had defaulted on their loans under my trust's ownership. I had facts. But facts don't always win against whispers. So, I decided to prepare for both, truth and perception. That night, I walked through the town with Earl, who had thankfully recovered from his fall and was now moving around with a walking cane and a stubborn smile. "Karen's not your problem," he said as we passed the old general store. "Fear is. I'm not afraid of her. Not her. Them. The people she's lied to. The ones who believe her because she's the loudest voice in the room. You need to be louder." I looked at him. "I don't yell." "Then speak louder with your actions." "What does that even mean?" He grinned. "Come with me." He led me to the old community center at the edge of town, a dusty building boarded up for years. Its windows were broken. Weeds crawled up the porch. The old, "Welcome to Harmony Ridge Events Hall" sign hung crookedly. "Open it," he said. I pushed the door. It groaned open. Inside, the smell of dust and memories hit me. There were cobwebs in every corner, faded banners from a long-forgotten harvest festival, and rusty folding chairs stacked along the wall. "This used to be the soul of the town," Earl said, "before the HOA made everything exclusive. They shut it down because it didn't meet some fire code, but never fixed it. It's a mess. Fix it. Make this your answer to Karen's hearing. You don't need a courtroom to prove your right to be here. Let the town see what you're building." I paused, looked around, and then I smiled. The next 5 days were a blur of activity. I called every handyman I had worked with across the state, painters, electricians, carpenters. Told them to drop everything and come to Harmony Ridge. I'd pay double. I also posted flyers and handed out leaflets at the bakery, the post office, the gas station, and even at the high school. Community restoration event. This Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Let's bring harmony back to Harmony Ridge. No HOA. No fines. No judgment. Just neighbors. And people showed up. Not just a few, dozens. Teens helped scrub floors. Retired carpenters fixed the leaky roof. Local artists painted murals of mountains and rivers across the side walls. I paid for every supply, nails, wood lights, paint, using funds I'd quietly set aside from rental profits over the years. Even people who'd previously ignored my letters came with dishes, tools, and music. Karen tried to stop it, of course. She called the county inspector. But Coleman was ready. He'd already signed off on temporary usage permits. She called the fire department. But Fire Chief Harold, who used to fish with my grandfather, gave us 2 thumbs up after a safety walkthrough. She tried calling the mayor. But the mayor's son was already hanging string lights on the roof. By Wednesday night, the place looked transformed. By Thursday morning, the entire town had heard about it. And by Thursday evening, it was time for the hearing. Town hall was packed. The building had never seen that many people since the 4th of July parade 10 years ago. Karen walked in wearing a red power suit, followed by 4 men in matching blue ties, the remnants of the HOA board. Her high heels clicked with purpose. Her face was stiff, but her eyes scanned every row, every whisper. She smiled like a politician. I arrived quietly. No entourage. No suit. Just me, in jeans and my grandfather's old army jacket. Sheriff Dalton stood at the back. Coleman was near the front. Even Earl came, propped up between 2 neighbors like a local legend. The city council sat at a long table, 5 members deep, with microphones and notepads. Councilwoman Bell, a sharp, gray-haired woman with reading glasses and a reputation for fairness, cleared her throat. We are here today to review the emergency injunction filed by the Harmony Ridge Homeowners Association, represented by Karen DeLong, against Mia Carter, regarding allegations of fraudulent ownership, unauthorized occupancy, and civil disruption. Karen stood confidently. Council members, she began, we are facing an unprecedented crisis in our beloved community. A woman with no verified ties to our HOA has not only taken residence in an off-grid structure, but claims ownership of nearly the entire town. She is harassing residents, hosting illegal gatherings, and has declared herself some sort of land baron. This must be stopped before Harmony Ridge loses its identity. Murmurs broke out. I stood slowly. May I respond? I asked. Bell nodded. I walked up and plugged in the USB drive. The projector lit up with documents, signatures, dates, notarized transfers, even video walkthroughs of neglected properties I had repaired or preserved. This is not an invasion, I said. It's a return. I am Jack Carter's granddaughter. Many of you knew him. He taught me about this town. Taught me about community. When the HOA turned Harmony Ridge into a private playground, many of you suffered. Silenced gardens, banned front yard swings, evictions over flower beds. I didn't come to punish anyone. I came to rebuild. I clicked to the next slide. A photo of the renovated community center. Last Saturday we opened this. For free. No gatekeeping. No fees. Just neighbors together again. There was clapping. Karen stood quickly. Emotional manipulation. These are just tactics to distract from the illegal way she acquired these titles. Councilman Pratt leaned in. Do you have any proof of fraud? Karen froze. Well, not yet. But her paper trail is too clean. That's suspicious. Someone chuckled in the back. I stepped forward again. The HOA defaulted on its loan. I purchased that debt. When they failed to pay, I acquired the rights to their assets, which included Karen's own property deed. I haven't acted on it because I believe in giving people chances, even when they don't deserve it. That line hit hard. Karen's face twitched. Councilwoman Bell sighed. Unless you have verifiable evidence of wrongdoing, this council sees no basis for an injunction. Karen opened her mouth, but Bell raised her hand. The hearing is over. The injunction is dismissed. The room erupted. Cheers. Whistles. Clapping. Karen stood frozen, her lips moving, but no sound coming out. I turned to walk away. But then, as I reached the door, a man blocked my path. He was tall, mid-50s, wearing a tan coat and holding a briefcase. Mia Carter? He asked. Yes. He handed me a legal document. You've been served, he said. Another lawsuit. This one wasn't from Karen. It was from a corporation. Urban Tech Industries versus Mia Carter. I flipped through it quickly. They were claiming breach of land contract. That I'd interfered with a proposed development project planned before I acquired the town parcels. A multi-million-dollar project. And then it hit me. Karen had found allies. Bigger ones. Outside ones. This was no longer just a neighborhood fight. This was about control of the entire region. And the next round would be war. I sat on the hood of my truck, the streetlight buzzing above, as the crowd thinned out from town hall. Everyone was congratulating each other, patting backs, hugging, relieved that the HOA Queen Karen had finally been silenced. But I wasn't smiling. Because I was staring at the document in my hands. Urban Tech Industries versus Mia Carter. A multi-million-dollar land development conglomerate was now suing me for breach of contract, obstruction, and intentional interference with their project. It wasn't just a corporate bluff. The lawsuit was 29 pages long. And it was clear. Urban Tech was planning to build a luxury resort, right in the heart of Harmony Ridge. And they were accusing me of derailing it. Earlier that year, long before I publicly revealed myself, Urban Tech had signed a tentative agreement with the HOA board to purchase a large section of Harmony Ridge. The lakefront, the forest preserve, and even a chunk of what they called the old uninhabited valley, which included Grandpa Jack's cabin. It was in the footnotes of a land development proposal I had overlooked, buried in the fine print of HOA board minutes. Back then, I thought it was just smoke and mirrors, the HOA dangling fake progress to keep residents compliant. But it wasn't fake. They'd promised Urban Tech over 800 acres of Harmony Ridge, in exchange for personal payoffs, reserved condos, and profit shares. But when I bought out the HOA's debt and legally dissolved the board, their contract with Urban Tech fell apart. Now Urban Tech was furious, and they had lawyers. Serious ones. They were demanding I reverse my land ownership, or they'd seek damages exceeding $16 million. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just a property dispute anymore. It was a corporate war. The next morning, I drove out to the overlook just beyond the cabin, a high ridge that gave a full view of Harmony Ridge Valley. Earl met me there, sipping from a tin cup. I told him everything. He didn't blink. Figures, he muttered. Greedy folks always want what they didn't build. What do I do now? I asked. I don't have $16 million to throw at lawyers. You fight. With what? Truth. History. And the people. I shook my head. People helped me clean the community center. That's different from fighting a corporate army. No, it's not, he said. Mia, they trusted you with this town. Not because of money, but because you reminded them who they were before fear took over. I looked down at the valley. It's not just Karen anymore. Nope. But Karen was the door. Now they're walking through it. Back in town, Karen was glowing again. She had gone silent after losing the HOA hearing, but now she was back, everywhere. She walked through the market with a tight smile, greeting people she hadn't spoken to in years. Her nails were freshly done. Her hair styled. And her tone. Victorious. You all saw the paper, right? She said loudly at the diner. Urban Tech is suing her. Should have just let the professionals take over. I kept my distance, watching quietly. Then came the cherry on top. She scheduled a town forum for Saturday. Not at the community center, of course, but at the private golf club she once swore was only for executive HOA members. She posted on every bulletin board, every corner of Facebook, even slipped flyers under doors. Save Harmony Ridge. Hear the truth about Mia Carter. A smear campaign. One designed to twist the Urban Tech lawsuit into my fault. To convince the town that I was blocking progress. That I was the reason jobs, hotels, tourism, and modern upgrades were being delayed. And she had help. A representative from Urban Tech, a sharp-jawed man named Lucas Cross, was scheduled to speak at her forum. I Googled him. He wasn't just a legal rep. He was vice president of community expansion projects. They were throwing the big guns at me. I didn't wait. If she was hosting a forum, so was I. But mine wouldn't be at the golf club. It would be where it mattered, at the community center, rebuilt with the hands of the people who actually lived there. We called it the Harmony Town Assembly. No fancy suits. No microphones. Just neighbors. I passed out handbills again, made social media posts, and personally knocked on 53 doors. It was exhausting. But I wanted them to know, I wasn't hiding. By Friday night, it was clear lines were being drawn. Some were excited to hear Urban Tech's vision. Others feared the town would be steamrolled. And a few weren't sure what to believe. I knew what was coming. Karen's forum would be polished. Planned. Slick. Mine would need heart. Saturday morning. The first sign something was wrong came when a neighbor named Julie ran into the community center, holding a flyer. Did you see this? She handed it to me. Urban Tech had released a full-color map of their proposed resort. Golf courses. Water parks. Private luxury cabins. And right where my grandfather's cabin stood? Future site of Harmony Ridge Skyview Tower and Wellness Spa. They had erased everything. Even the forests. The valleys. The schools. They were turning our quiet town into a playground for millionaires. Karen's forum began at noon. I didn't go, but I saw the live stream. Lucas Cross spoke calmly, wearing a navy suit and expensive watch. He showed renderings, timelines, promises of jobs, local hiring. Karen sat behind him smiling like a cat that caught a mouse. Then she took the mic. While some people claim they're here to restore Harmony Ridge, she said, they're actually blocking progress. Miss Carter's emotional appeal is sweet, but emotions don't pay bills. Urban Tech does. Some people clapped. Others hesitated. She continued, when the lawsuit is over and Mia Carter's so-called ownership is proven fraudulent, Harmony Ridge will finally become what it was meant to be, a premier mountain destination. I switched off the stream. Enough. It was time for my forum. 3 p.m. The community center was filled wall to wall. Old chairs, plastic stools, people sitting on benches, and even the floor. No suits, no projections, just neighbors. I stood at the front, holding a folded photo of my grandfather. This town was built by hands, I began. Not machines, not money, but people, like Jack Carter, who taught me that ownership is a duty, not a weapon. I passed around photos of Jack fixing neighbors' fences, of Earl hauling firewood to a family during a snowstorm, of the Old Town Harvest Festival. This was Harmony Ridge, until it was sold off, piece by piece, in secret. The HOA promised luxury, but what they gave us was division. I held up the Urban Tech brochure. They want to erase everything. No cabins, no forests, no community, just profit. A murmur swept through the crowd. Someone raised a hand. What do we do? Stand with me, I said. Speak up, because they can sue me, but they can't buy all of you. That night, we created something I never expected, a petition. Not just against Urban Tech, but for the preservation of Harmony Ridge as a historical district. A designation that, if granted by the county, would block any future developments permanently. By Sunday, the petition had 417 signatures. By Monday, Karen had a meltdown. She marched into the county courthouse demanding that the petition be thrown out. They're not even verified voters, she yelled. But they were. And the county clerk confirmed it. Karen's face turned red. Urban Tech's rep, Lucas Cross, stormed into my lawyer's office with a cease and desist letter. I didn't flinch. We'll bury you in paperwork, he warned. I smiled. I've been buried before, I said. That's how I learned to dig. He stormed out. That night, someone threw a brick through my cabin window. A note was attached. Leave or else. I didn't sleep. Earl came and sat on the porch with his shotgun. Just like the old days. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered. Good, he said. Because the real storm hasn't started yet. And he was right. Because the next day, Karen filed a federal complaint claiming I used insider information to manipulate land purchases. Now the FBI was involved. The black SUV with government plates rolled up just after sunrise. I watched from the cabin window, mug in hand, heart pounding like a war drum. It was quiet, too quiet. Birds that usually chirped in the morning had gone silent, as if even nature sensed something was wrong. 2 agents stepped out. One was tall and pale with a military buzz cut and a file tucked under his arm. The other wore dark glasses and moved with the kind of quiet precision that made you feel like he already knew what you were hiding. Miss Mia Carter? The taller agent asked as I stepped onto the porch. Yes, I answered, standing straight. I'm Agent Marcus Hill. This is Agent Rosario. We're here under federal instruction to discuss a complaint filed against you concerning land acquisition fraud and unlawful corporate obstruction. I blinked. May I ask who filed the complaint? Karen DeLong, backed by Urban Tech Industries. Of course. I invited them inside. They didn't touch the coffee I offered. Agent Hill opened a folder and laid it flat on the table. Inside were a dozen pages, copies of land titles, timestamps, transfer receipts, and a single page marked confidential with my name circled in red. This document here, he said, tapping it, shows that you were the registered proxy on 3 LLCs that purchased property across Harmony Ridge in the past 5 years. That's correct. And you failed to disclose your identity to the HOA board during those acquisitions. I was under no legal obligation to. Maybe not, he said. But it gave you an unfair market advantage. Some would call it strategic deception. Others would call it smart business, I replied, locking eyes with him. Agent Rosario spoke for the first time. Where did the funding come from? I hesitated. He noticed. Miss Carter, you're not under arrest. But we need to understand if any of this funding was obtained through coercion, offshore laundering, or improper channels. I built this, I said softly. Every cent. Every contract. I did it the hard way. Prove it, he said. I walked to my bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled out a fireproof box. Inside were flash drives, tax returns, signed contracts, and bank statements going back 7 years. I had kept them organized, not because I was paranoid, but because Grandpa Jack always told me. Truth doesn't need to yell, but it better be ready to speak. I handed them the documents. Agent Hill raised his brows. That's thorough. Agent Rosario nodded. We'll need to verify every single one. Go ahead, I said. I have nothing to hide. They left an hour later without making any threats or arrests. But the tension didn't. Word spread fast, faster than I expected. By noon, half the town was whispering that the FBI was at Mia's cabin. Karen, of course, wasted no time. She went live on Facebook, standing in front of the HOA's old welcome sign with dramatic music playing from her Bluetooth speaker. "There you have it, folks," she said, fake tears glistening under her eyes. "Federal agents. Fraud. Conspiracy. Our peaceful little town has been hijacked by a master manipulator." The video got over 22,000 views in a single day. People who had been on my side started avoiding eye contact in the market. Some even pulled their names off the preservation petition, saying they didn't want to be part of something shady. Earl told me to hold strong. But I was cracking. 3 days passed. Then came the moment I never expected. Agent Hill returned. Alone. He handed me a sealed envelope marked Federal Response, classified until released. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a government stamp and 3 lines. "All allegations against Mia Carter are unsubstantiated. Land acquisitions were legal, verifiable, and within regulatory bounds. Case closed." I stared at it. Agent Hill gave me a faint smile. "You're clean, Miss Carter. Cleaner than most we've ever seen. Frankly, I'm impressed." "Thank you," I whispered, tears stinging the edges of my eyes. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and one more thing," he added. "That Urban Tech lawsuit? It's falling apart. Fast." He wasn't lying. The next day, a journalist from the local Gazette published an exposé. Luxury takeover or legal extortion. The truth behind Urban Tech's Harmony Ridge plans. It went viral. In it, the reporter revealed that Urban Tech had been using shady tactics to force landowners into selling below value. Not just in Harmony Ridge, but in towns across the region. Multiple lawsuits had already been filed in Wyoming and Montana, both for deceptive development deals. And Harmony Ridge? The land Karen had promised them? Legally no longer hers to promise. Because of me, the tide turned fast. Suddenly, people were knocking on my door again, with casseroles, letters of apology, even tears. One man, a retired teacher, held my hand and said, "I'm sorry I doubted you. You reminded us what real stewardship looks like." But not everyone was celebrating. Karen was unraveling. She stopped showing up to her own events. She missed a planning meeting with her Urban Tech lawyer. Her Facebook page went dark. Her Range Rover was seen parked outside her house for 3 straight days, never moving. Then came the real shocker. The county treasurer posted a public notice. Karen DeLong's property was officially repossessed due to unpaid liens and failed mortgage restructuring. In plain terms, she lost her house. A house she once claimed was untouchable. A house I now own through the foreclosure of the HOA's debts. I had every legal right to evict her. But I didn't. Instead, I sent her a letter. Not with a threat. Not with gloating. Just one sentence. "You are not my enemy, fear is." That evening, I found her standing at the edge of my driveway. Hair down. No makeup. No heels. Just a tired woman holding a single piece of paper. She walked slowly toward me and stopped a few feet away. "I read your letter," she said. "I meant it." She looked away. I didn't know how much hate was in me until you showed up. I was scared. Scared you'd change everything. Scared of being forgotten. I nodded. I was scared too. Of not being enough. Of failing my grandfather. A long silence passed between us. Finally, she reached into her bag and handed me a folder. "I'm dissolving the last of the HOA's legal ties," she said. "There are still a few permits and records. They're yours now." I took the folder. "Thank you." She turned and began to walk away, then paused. "If you'd ever be willing to talk," she said quietly, "I'd like to learn how to rebuild instead of destroy." And then she left. Earl and I sat by the cabin fire that night, the stars burning bright above us. "You did it," he said, sipping his coffee. "Not yet," I replied. "There's one more thing." "What's that?" "I'm going to donate the cabin and half the valley land to the town, as a protected heritage trust. No more sales. No more resorts. Just community." Earl's eyes welled. Jack would be proud. But just as I began drafting the paperwork, a black envelope arrived at my door. No return address. No stamp. Inside, a photo. Of me. Walking into the county records office. And a note. "You may have won this round, but Harmony Ridge isn't as clean as you think. We're coming." Someone was still watching. And the battle? It wasn't over yet. The photo shook me to my core. It wasn't the image itself. Just me, walking into the county records office, head down, carrying files. Nothing unusual. But it was the note attached that changed everything. "You may have won this round, but Harmony Ridge isn't as clean as you think. We're coming." It wasn't signed. There was no fingerprint. No return address. Just black paper, a white photo, and the threat of something deeper. I reread the line, "Harmony Ridge isn't as clean as you think," again and again. For the first time since Karen called 911 on me, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Real fear. That same night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch swing wrapped in an old blanket of Grandpa Jack's, the stars above seeming more distant than usual. Earl came over with his shotgun again. He hadn't carried it since the HOA drama ended. He noticed the envelope on the table. "Someone watching you?" he asked. "Feels like it." He stared at the photo, lips tightening. "You don't recognize this paper, do you?" "What do you mean?" He held the envelope close to the firelight. "This ain't new. This kind of threat. I've seen it before." I turned toward him. "When?" 30 years ago, he said. "Back when your granddad tried to stop the old mining company from digging into the ridge. Same kind of note. Same black envelope. Same shadow threats. You never told me about a mining company. Because Jack buried that story. Said the town wasn't ready." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" He leaned back, his eyes lost in memory. Flashback, 30 years ago. Harmony Ridge had a secret. One buried beneath its surface. A deposit of rare earth minerals, lithium, cobalt, and some compound called lazurine, which scientists believe could be used in advanced tech. One day, a quiet company called Greyrock Mining LLC showed up with permits, geologists, and smooth-talking lawyers. They told the town they were simply surveying for environmental research. Jack didn't buy it. He followed their trucks. He mapped their digging sites. And what he found scared him. They weren't researching, Earl explained. They were drilling, testing, mapping out everything underneath Harmony Ridge. Your granddad tried to blow the whistle. But before he could, the company pulled out overnight. Why? Earl looked me dead in the eye. Because he made them. What do you mean? I mean Jack Carter, your grandfather, found the original mining charter filed back in the 1800s that made all mineral rights conditional on community consent. He got the charter revoked and bought up the land they wanted to dig under. I gasped. So Grandpa, he protected the land by owning it? That's why he told you. You care for land until it's someone else's turn. He wasn't just talking about trees and fences. He meant what's beneath it too. Suddenly, everything made sense. Urban Tech wasn't here for vacation homes or a resort. They were here because they rediscovered what Jack buried. The minerals. That's why they were so desperate. That's why they backed Karen. That's why they were trying to invalidate my land ownership. Because if they could remove me, the land would fall into neutral hands, and the mining permits could be fast-tracked through the state. My fingers tightened around the black envelope. It wasn't just a threat. It was a warning. They were coming for the ridge. The next morning, I called Deputy Coleman and asked to meet him at the county records office. We dug through old archives, newspaper clippings, land transfer files, and finally, a faded folder marked Greyrock Mining, Harmony Ridge 1992. Inside was a scan of a handwritten letter. It was from Jack Carter. To whom it may concern. This land has seen enough theft masked as progress. Harmony Ridge belongs to those who live in it, not corporations who see only dollar signs. The minerals beneath our feet may power their machines, but they are not worth destroying our community. I hereby claim protective ownership through the Mineral Rights Preservation Clause under the 1889 State Charter. Jack R. Carter. Attached was a notarized document. Mineral rights. Ownership transferred to Jack R. Carter. Effective in perpetuity. I stared at it, my throat tightening. That meant I now owned those rights. And the companies had no legal path to mine under my land. Not without my signature. I photocopied every document, took pictures, and emailed copies to 2 lawyers. One in Denver. One in D.C. Then I got to work. That week, I scheduled a town-wide emergency meeting. I made flyers with bold red letters. They're not done. Find out why. I posted them on every streetlight, church board, grocery window, and post office box. At 6 p.m. on Friday, the community center was packed. Standing room only. Karen wasn't there. But 3 new men in suits were, sitting in the back row. I knew who they were, Urban Tech. I stood in front of the crowd with a projector and slowly revealed everything. The mining, the threats, the envelope, the rare minerals under the town. I showed Jack's handwritten letter. I showed the mineral rights transfer. And then, I played a hidden recording I had secretly captured during my meeting with Urban Tech as Lucas Cross. Lucas, voice on tape, look, everyone has a price. Even Miss Carter. She just doesn't know hers yet. Me. And if I never sell? Lucas. Then we do what corporations have always done. We build around the problem. Or we remove it. Gasps filled the room. I let silence hang in the air. Then I said, they were never here for Harmony Ridge. They were here to tear it apart from underneath. Just like they've done to towns across the country. But we all of us can stop them. A round of applause broke out. Then a cheer. Then a chant. Protect the ridge. Protect the ridge. The very next day, I filed a federal environmental protection application, requesting Harmony Ridge be recognized as an environmentally and historically sensitive site. If approved, no mining could legally occur without a decade-long review and public hearing. It was my shield. But Urban Tech wasn't done. They launched a media attack. They paid influencers, bought ad space in local and state newspapers, and even ran TV commercials. Is Mia Carter blocking progress? Thousands of jobs at stake. Tourism crushed. Economy dying. One woman to blame. They were trying to turn the state against me. But I didn't flinch. Because 2 days later, I got a call. From Senator Grace Thompson, chair of the State Land and Minerals Committee. I read your application, Ms. Carter, she said. And your grandfather's letter. Powerful stuff. Thank you, Senator. I want you to testify. Before the committee. We're going to vote on emergency protections for Harmony Ridge. I felt my knees buckle. Are you serious? Urban Tech has powerful friends. But so do you now. 3 days later, I stood in the Capitol building in Denver, facing rows of lawmakers, camera crews, journalists, and a full table of corporate lawyers from Urban Tech. Karen was nowhere in sight. I gave the speech of my life, about legacy, community, and the quiet battle between greed and preservation. When I finished, Senator Thompson stood and said, "The motion for emergency preservation status for Harmony Ridge is passed, unanimously." I felt my chest explode with relief. Urban Tech is faces? Priceless. But just as I returned home, exhausted, victorious, and ready to rest, a letter was waiting on my cabin porch. No envelope this time. Just one sentence on a torn sheet of legal paper. Jack knew what he was hiding. Dig deeper. On the back, a map. Old. Torn. Hand-drawn. With a red X marked beneath the cabin. The cabin creaked that night like it hadn't in years. It was the kind of sound that seemed to breathe, not just groan. As if the very walls had been waiting, holding their secrets tight, bracing for the moment they'd finally be revealed. I sat at Grandpa Jack's old workbench, the map spread in front of me. It was hand-drawn in pencil, decades old, edges worn, with faint grid lines and a jagged sketch of the surrounding ridge. The most striking thing wasn't the cabin, or even the trails, it was what lay beneath. A single red X. Right under the floorboards of the living room. On the back of the map was that cryptic note again. Jack knew what he was hiding. Dig deeper. I stared at the note until the lamp flickered. What was he hiding? I thought I knew everything. Jack taught me how to fish, how to chop wood, how to live off the land. He told me stories about the town, the old mining companies, even the land disputes. But this was different. This was buried. At sunrise, I pulled back the rug in the center of the cabin. The floorboards were solid pine, but old. Worn from boots, rain, and years of living. I grabbed Jack's crowbar from the tool shed. My hands shook as I wedged it under the edge of the third plank and pulled. Crack. The board gave way. Then another. And another. Then I saw it. A shallow box of thick, black metal with a rusted handle bolted into the earth beneath. I cleared more wood. It wasn't just a box. It was a hatch. And it was locked. But Jack had taught me every hiding place in the cabin. I ran to the bookshelf, reached behind the faded copy of Moby Dick, and found the small key taped to the back cover. I knelt beside the hatch and slid the key in. It fit. Clunk. The hatch groaned as I pulled it open. A wave of cold, dry air swept upward, like a breath from the past. I stared down into a narrow wooden staircase, cloaked in darkness. I grabbed a lantern and began my descent. The air inside was thick, like the oxygen had been waiting for decades to move again. The steps were tight, steep, and creaked under my weight. Cobwebs clung to the corners. The walls were made of smooth, hand-cut rock. Jack had carved this himself. At the bottom was a small room, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. A desk, a chair, shelves filled with labeled boxes, and a wooden chest with iron bands. I lit the lantern and stepped inside. The desk had a single journal on it, bound in brown leather. I opened it. The first line made me gasp. If you're reading this, it means they've come back. Grandpa Jack's journal, excerpt number 1. Harmony Ridge is more than just land. It's a fault line between greed and goodness. I've spent my life protecting it, but I fear it won't be enough. In 1992, I found what Greyrock was really after. Not just minerals, but lazurite. Lazurite isn't just rare. It's experimental. It doesn't occur in natural formations this pure. That means someone put it there. Or buried it. I took samples. I sent them to a friend in the Army Corps. 2 weeks later, I was told never to contact him again. And then Greyrock pulled out. I built this room to keep records, evidence, and most importantly, the core sample. If they come back, protect it. It cannot fall into the wrong hands. I scanned the room. There, on the middle shelf, was a small, sealed glass cylinder. Inside, a glowing blue mineral, unlike anything I'd ever seen. It shimmered, even in low light. Like it was alive. Lazurite. I reached out, then stopped. Jack had written more. Excerpt number 2. They'll try again. Maybe in 10 years. Maybe 50. They won't care who they hurt. I didn't tell the town. I couldn't. Fear spreads faster than fire. I told Earl, and I told your mother. But she didn't believe me. She left. You came back. If you found this, it's because you were meant to. Finish what I started. Protect this place. Not just for Harmony Ridge, but for the world. I sank to the floor, the weight of everything crushing me. This wasn't just a land grab. This was a cover-up, an extraction plan, a secret mineral that had never been documented publicly. And now I had the last known sample in my hands. That's why Urban Tech wanted the land. They weren't building resorts. They were drilling for lazurite. And now I knew the truth. I wasn't just defending a town anymore. I was standing between a powerful secret and the people who would do anything to control it. When I emerged from the hatch, Earl was sitting on the porch. I held up the cylinder. He stared at it for a long time. So, he said, you found it. You knew. He nodded. Jack showed me once. Said it wasn't from this world. I thought he meant it metaphorically. I sat beside him. What do I do now? You do what Jack did, he said. You protect it. You don't run. You don't hide. You stand tall. That night, I didn't sleep. Because at 3:12 a.m., someone cut the cabin's power. The lights went out. The fridge clicked off. The porch cameras offline. I grabbed Earl's shotgun and crept to the window. There, down the path, were two figures in all black, moving toward the cabin with military precision. They weren't cops. They weren't Urban Tech. They were professionals. I grabbed the lazurite core and the journal and bolted down the hatch, locking the door behind me. Footsteps pounded above me. Voices. Muted. Urgent. I held my breath in the dark. Then silence. 30 minutes later, I heard tires on gravel. The SUV drove off. I waited another full hour before I crept back up. The cabin was ransacked. Drawers pulled out. Files shredded. Even my grandfather's portrait torn from the wall. But they didn't find the hatch. They didn't find me. By dawn, I was gone. Not running, relocating. I packed the lazurite core, the journal, and every document into a secure case and drove to a private lab in Boulder where my friend Dr. Amy Lowen worked, a geochemist who owed me a favor. I left it all with her. Don't tell anyone, I said. Just verify it. Quietly. Discreetly. She nodded, eyes wide. Whatever this is, she whispered. It's not on any record. I know. Back in Harmony Ridge, the town was shaken again. Rumors flew, black vans, power outages, Mia in hiding. Karen resurfaced to stir the pot. Mia Carter is clearly unstable, she said in an interview. She's hiding something dangerous. I'm calling for a federal investigation. Again. I didn't respond. Because something else had just happened. Dr. Lowen called. Her voice was trembling. I ran the tests, she said. This mineral, lazurite, it's not just rare. It reacts to heat and pressure. It creates a charge. A stable, renewable power source. Clean. Infinite. It could replace fossil fuels. My stomach turned. If the world knew, she continued, governments would kill to get it. And suddenly, it all made sense. Urban Tech didn't want Harmony Ridge. They wanted energy domination. They wanted control over the most powerful mineral never publicly discovered. And Grandpa Jack had buried it. Now it was in my hands. But there was one problem. I wasn't the only one who knew anymore. Because that night, a drone flew past the cabin. And when I looked at the footage the next morning, I saw it drop a single object on the porch. A burner phone. It buzzed with a single message. If you want to keep Harmony Ridge safe, meet us alone. Midnight. The old Ranger Tower. I held the burner phone like it was a live grenade. Midnight. The old Ranger Tower. That place had been abandoned for years. Jack and I used to hike up there during the summer, long before the HOA put up fences and warning signs. It sat deep in the forest, overlooking Harmony Ridge like a silent sentinel. Quiet. Tall. Forgotten. But not anymore. Now it was a meeting point. And the people who called me there? They weren't police. They weren't Urban Tech. They weren't friends. I didn't know who they were. But they knew me. They knew where I lived. They knew what I'd found. And if I didn't show up, I feared what would happen next. I didn't tell Earl. Didn't want him involved. Not in this. Instead, I left a single note on my porch table in case I didn't come back. If something happens to me, the lazurite is with Dr. Lowen. Tell no one. Not even the mayor. Then I took my truck and drove out just before 11:30 p.m. The Ranger Tower sat 5 miles off the main road, at the end of a winding trail swallowed by trees. I parked beneath a canopy of pine, switched off the engine, and let silence settle around me. No owls. No crickets. Just wind. I grabbed a flashlight and hiked the last half mile. When the tower came into view, a single yellow light flickered from the top window. They were already there. I climbed the creaky metal stairs slowly, one hand on the flashlight, the other gripping the pepper spray in my coat pocket. At the top, the door creaked open before I touched it. A figure stepped into view, tall, bearded, calm eyes. He raised both hands. No weapons, he said softly. We're not here to hurt you. I stepped inside. There were 3 of them, 2 men, 1 woman, dressed in plain clothes, not a badge or emblem in sight. They looked like hikers. Or teachers. Or engineers. But I knew better. The woman spoke first. My name is Leanne. This is Tom and Craig. We're part of a shadow group monitoring mineral-based land acquisitions across the country. I frowned. Shadow group? Like FBI? Tom shook his head. No. We're watchdogs. Whistleblowers. Researchers. We've been tracking lazurite since 1995. My heart stopped. You know about lazurite? We knew about your grandfather, Leanne said. Jack Carter wasn't just a carpenter. He was a guardian. And now so are you. I staggered back. How did you know Jack? He worked with one of our early members. A geologist who blew the whistle on Greyrock mining in the 90s. After that, Jack went dark. We lost contact. We thought the sample was lost forever. Until we saw you on the news. She pulled a tablet from her bag and played a video. It was me, standing in front of the town assembly, holding the sample in my hand. We have eyes everywhere, she said. My skin prickled. Urban Tech works for someone bigger, Craig added. They're a shell company for a larger group called Virex Corp. And Virex isn't just interested in minerals, they specialize in militarized energy applications. I felt the room tilt. You're saying they want lazurite for weapons? Tom nodded. Imagine a drone that never needs refueling. A satellite that runs indefinitely. Submarines that can disappear for decades. Lazurite doesn't just power cities, it can power control. I swallowed hard. And I'm the only one with it, I whispered. You and Dr. Lowen, Leanne replied. And that puts you both in danger. They paused. Then she said something I wasn't prepared for. We want you to give it up. I blinked. What? Not to us. Not to Virex. But to the world. Make it public. Let independent scientists study it. Let universities test it. Once it's out, no one can own it. No one can hide it. I shook my head. If I do that, Harmony Ridge will be overrun. Journalists. Government trucks. Protesters. The town won't survive it. Maybe, Leanne said. But secrecy is how Virex wins. Truth is the only weapon we have. I left the tower with a decision heavier than the lazurite itself. Tell the truth and lose the town. Or bury the secret again and protect what Grandpa Jack gave his life for. Either way, there'd be consequences. I didn't sleep that night. At 5 a.m., I drove back to the cabin, only to find something waiting for me on the porch again. But this time, it wasn't a threat. It was a child's drawing, crayons on a sheet of lined notebook paper. A house. A forest. A stick-figure woman with wild curly hair me, standing next to a small cabin under the sun. Scrawled across the top in big purple letters. Thank you for saving our town. No name. No address. Just a child's hope. I fell to my knees and cried. Later that day, Dr. Lowen called. There's something else, she said. What? Lazurite reacts to human cells. I froze. What does that mean? It's not radioactive. But when I brought the sample near certain blood cultures, they stabilized. Regenerated. Are you saying? I don't know what I'm saying yet. But Mia, this may not just be a power source. It might be a healing one too. I hung up and walked outside. The wind rushed through the trees like a voice. Jack's voice. You care for land until it's someone else's turn. That night, I called Leanne. I made my decision. She waited. I won't bury it. But I won't expose it either. That's not an option. It is, I said. I'm building a trust. A protected scientific foundation. Independent. Global. Neutral. It will study lazurite under transparency. And it will belong to everyone. Not Virex. Not the US government. Not corporations. Silence. Then. That's bold. It's the only way. Leanne nodded. We'll support you. The next day, I stood on the steps of Harmony Ridge's new town hall, rebuilt by volunteers after the community center overflowed. Reporters packed the lawn. News vans. Locals. Elders. Teens. Even Karen stood off to the side, arms folded unreadable. I took a deep breath. And spoke. My name is Mia Carter. I came here to reclaim my grandfather's cabin. But I found something deeper, a secret buried not just beneath land, but beneath trust. A mineral called lazurite. Powerful. Mysterious. Dangerous in the wrong hands. I now hold its last known sample. But I'm giving it away. To you. To science. To the world. This town isn't just a home. It's now a beacon of truth, of preservation, of power shared, not stolen. The crowd erupted. Flashbulbs popped. And just as I turned to walk down the steps, a voice cried out, Mia. I turned. It was Karen. She stepped forward, hesitant. Then said, I was wrong. A hush fell over the crowd. She took a deep breath. You didn't destroy Harmony Ridge. You saved it. And, if you'll let me, I want to help you protect it. I walked toward her, extended my hand. She took it. And just like that, the past and future shook hands. But even then I knew. Something else was coming. Because 1 week later, a letter arrived. This time from the U.S. Department of Energy. Subject line: Request for immediate federal oversight and custody of lazurite for national interest purposes. And stamped in red. Mandatory compliance. I stared at the letter in silence. The words were plain, clinical, and terrifying. Mandatory compliance notice. Effective immediately, the United States Department of Energy, DOE, requests the transfer of all known lazurite samples, research data, and associated documentation to a secure federal laboratory for classified containment and study. Failure to comply will result in legal action under the Energy National Security Act. Department of Energy, Washington D.C. ***. The U.S. government had come knocking. This wasn't a request. It was a command. And with that red stamp, Harmony Ridge was no longer a town. It had become a target. I spent the next hour pacing the cabin floor. The lazurite sample sat locked inside a lead-lined box under my floorboards. I had already signed over its stewardship to the Harmony Scientific Trust, a nonprofit backed by independent researchers, journalists, and global academic partners. But the government didn't care. To them, ownership meant nothing. They wanted control. I called Leanne. They found out, I said. DOE is demanding the lazurite. They're threatening prosecution. We knew this day would come, she replied. But we're ready. What can I do? Don't give it to them. Leanne, not yet. We've launched a public appeal. We've contacted The Guardian, Reuters, BBC, international press. If they come in guns blazing, the world will be watching. I sighed. And what if they don't care about the world watching? She paused. Then we hold the line anyway. That night, I stood before Harmony Ridge's town council. The courtroom was packed again. Except this time, the stakes weren't just local. Reporters lined the walls. TV crews broadcast live. Protesters with signs reading, "Protect the Ridge," and "Science belongs to all," filled the steps outside. Earl sat front row. Even Karen was there. This time, sitting quietly. I took the podium. The Department of Energy wants to take lazurite away. Not to protect it, but to bury it in classified bunkers, far from public accountability. They want to weaponize it, patent it, license it to the highest bidder. But Harmony Ridge isn't theirs to take. Lazurite isn't anyone's to own. That's why I signed the mineral, and this land, into the Harmony Trust. You can't sue a trust. You can't arrest an idea. You can only hope people will stand for what's right. So I ask you, not as the owner of this land, but as a guardian, will you stand with me? The crowd erupted. One by one, people stood. Earl. Mrs. Jensen from the bakery. The teenage boy who once pulled his petition signature out of fear. Karen. Everyone. Standing. In silent, powerful defiance. The next morning, 3 black SUVs rolled into Harmony Ridge. No sirens. No guns. Just suits. DOE agents stepped out and were met at the town border by a wall of residents, shoulder to shoulder, holding signs, singing old folk songs, and standing beneath a banner that read, "This land is not for sale." I stood at the front with Earl and Leanne. A tall man in a dark blue suit approached. No name tag. No smile. "Miss Carter," he said, "you are in violation of federal compliance orders. We ask that you turn over the lazurite." I handed him a copy of the trust charter, notarized, backed by international counsel. "This is no longer mine," I said. "It belongs to the world." He skimmed the document, frowned, then looked around at the hundreds of cameras filming him. He knew. They couldn't raid a town under the eyes of the world. They couldn't silence this many people. Not this time. He stepped back. "We'll be in touch." The SUVs drove off. Cheers erupted. 2 months later, the International Lazurite Institute opened at the Harmony Ridge Research Center. Co-founded by 6 universities, 2 former government scientists, and dozens of volunteer citizens. Lazurite remained in Harmony Ridge, under 24/7 protection, completely transparent, with live streams, open-source documentation, and rotating global oversight. The town became known as the place that said no. No to greed. No to silence. No to power without people. As for me, I still live in the cabin. Still barefoot on the porch some mornings, coffee in hand. Grandpa Jack's portrait now hangs beside the fireplace again. Restored. Framed. Smiling. Karen became the director of Harmony Ridge's new tourism welcome center. She gives walking tours now, and tells every visitor about the woman who turned a cabin into a shield. Sometimes she even laughs about it. Earl retired his shotgun, and now helps kids plant trees in the valley. Last week, a young girl knocked on my cabin door. She handed me a picture, just like the last one, drawn in crayons. This one had the same house, the same sun, but now, there were people holding hands around it. Above it were 5 words that made everything worth it. "You saved more than land." And in that moment, I knew the fight was over. Not because we beat them, but because we refused to become them. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Did you enjoy this 10-part journey? Rate this story from 0 to 10 and tag a friend who needs to hear it. Harmony Ridge will never be the same, and neither will you.